Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Industrial Community Development Subcommittee of the Peabody City Council. Members of the committee are myself as chair, Councilor Saslaw, who's here, Councilor McGinn is here, Councilor Rosignol and Councilor Sharris, both here. What I'd like to do is have Health Director Sharon Cameron come up and give us an update, please, Sharon, if you would. Thank you.
Good evening. I did put together a brief overview of the proposed rodent control ordinance that we've been working on for quite some time. Okay, thank you. I wanted to start by giving you an overview of where we stand with complaints in the city, and similar to prior years, you can see that we are continuing to receive a lot of complaints, and most of those complaints are most heavily in the more congested parts of the city. So, as you know, our existing strategy when we receive rodent complaints is we go out to the neighborhood and we do education. We also do code enforcement when we identify problem properties. And we also do contract with the pest control service where it's appropriate. But we really need more tools. And what we want to do is get more into a prevention mode than just reacting to complaints. And I think the proposed ordinance would do that for us. So, one of the biggest things we're proposing is that many activities that are permitted by city departments would be required to have integrated pest management plans submitted as a condition of receiving the permit. For certain types of permits issued by the building department for demolition work, work on abandoned properties, large-scale commercial properties, residential subdivisions would be required to have IPM plans. For permits issued by the Public Services Department for certain utility work of certain size, they'd be required to submit an IPM plan. Within the fire department, they issue permits for dumpsters, and dumpsters are a really big source of food that attracts rodents, so anybody with a dumpster permit would be required to implement an IPM plan. Within the health department, anybody seeking a permit for a restaurant, food establishment, a landfill transfer station, animal permit, trash trucks, those sort of things, those would also require an IPM plan as a condition of permitting. For public properties, we would recommend that all public buildings and public parks also be subject to the requirements for an IPM plan, and have covered receptacles where receptacles are provided on public property.
Ms. Cameron, can I ask a question?
Sure.
That is your proposal, or some of those are already in place? Because I know some of them are already in place.
No, these are all what's proposed in the draft ordinance in front of you.
So the ordinance that we currently have is being modified, or is there no ordinance at all?
There is no ordinance that requires IPM plans for any of these type of activities. We have, as a matter of practice within the health department, we've adopted 3 years ago the requirement for food establishments to have an IPM plan, but we don't have any citywide ordinance requiring any of these things.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
So that's the prevention piece of it. On the mitigation side, we have also proposed certain activities would be required to pay into a mitigation fund that would be used to fund rodent control activities when they're needed. So all of the types of projects that I just talked to you about that would require an IPM plan would also pay into this mitigation fund, but also some of the smaller projects that wouldn't require an IPM plan but still have the potential to create conditions that could generate rodent activity, maybe because they're disturbing soil or that sort of thing. Those sort of projects would be asked to pay into a mitigation fund as well. And those funds would be dedicated towards when we need to contract for pest control services, and also to provide administrative support to my department for following up on all the requirements for IPM plans as a condition of permitting. So an IPM plan, this, I won't get into a lot of detail here, but it basically calls for the owner of the property or the permit holder to think about what they're going to do to prevent pests being generated as a result of their activities. They're going to need to have an initial survey by a pest control operator to look for sanitation conditions that could be conducive to rodents, to look for sources of existing activity such as burrows. They need to have a plan for how they're going to treat if it's needed. They need to have a plan for how they're going to train their staff to recognize signs of rodent activity on a property. They need to have a plan in place for how they're going to respond to complaints from residents of abutting properties if there is in fact rodent activity generated as a result of the work they're doing. I'm going to skip this section now. This is a discussion about trash receptacles, and I know the mayor wants to weigh in on this, so I'm going to bypass this piece. In terms of enforcement, we envision that each department would be responsible for assuring that IPM plans are in place before they issue the permits from their departments. The IPM plans themselves would actually go to my department. We would review them to make sure that they're appropriate. My department, the health department, would continue to handle all rodent complaints within the city. We would have the potential to issue fines of up to $300 a day for non-compliance with the terms of the ordinance, and it could also include revocation of permits if people are not complying with the terms, with the requirements of the ordinance. And again, any fines that would be collected would go into that mitigation fund that we could use to contract for pest control services when we need them. In terms of, whoops, let me go back to that slide. Okay, the potential cost impact, each of the departments that worked with us on developing this proposed ordinance recommended fees that they thought were appropriate, and I've put those up in the table, but you can see that there is some revenue that would be expected to be generated from people paying into the mitigation fund of about $60,000, and there would be some startup costs to the city of about $128,000, and I would like to note that that doesn't include, the park department has advised me that to implement the recommendations or the ordinance as written, it would require extra manpower on their part to, for the extra time it takes to empty the covered receptacle. It's a more labor-intensive process, and it also might require more frequency of emptying in addition to just taking longer to empty each receptacle. So that is what our best estimate is the cost impact of this ordinance.
Thank you, Ms. Cameron. If there's no opposition, we'll hold discussion for momentarily and have the mayor chime in. Mr. Mayor, please.
Good evening, Council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first, I just want to thank Sharon Cameron, our health director. This has been a major topic for her and her department, and I know she's worked very hard on this, as she always does on all the different issues. I, like all of you, have gotten phone calls, text messages, videos, pictures sent to us. I got one today just recently from, or yesterday on one in Bartholomew Street. That was a concern, and this has certainly been an issue for the city of Peabody, like it has been an issue for all cities and towns. I can tell you that it is a topic at a number of municipal conferences that I've been to, because a number of cities and towns are dealing with these very issues. I think you've all seen newspaper stories about different communities, and it's certainly very real here in the city of Peabody. And Sharon and I and others have done a great deal of work to try to figure out ways to attack this and ways to help our residents. In terms of the trash receptacles, requiring covers on those trash receptacles, I think that's something we have to look at and have to make a decision on very, very soon. In the research that we've done, we're estimating that for a 65-gallon trash receptacle, we're looking at about $45 per. That would be one for trash. We'd also have to get one for recycling. Potentially $90 per home here in the city. We're looking at about 18,000 homes here in the city. And that would be in the vicinity of about $1.7 million investment for the city. That certainly is an option. The other option would be to have the resident pay that bill, have it act as an excise tax of $90, one-time fee for the purchase of those two trash receptacles. I've spoken with JRM. They are open to discussions regarding the change if we go to a policy requiring these type of trash receptacles, which other cities have done. Their trucks right now are not equipped and not adapted to pick up those trash receptacles. There would have to be some work done to their vehicles. It's certainly work that can be done. It's about $5,000 worth of work. They have about 10 vehicles, as well as some additional backups that would be required. I certainly think that that is very doable with JRM to work that out. So that is the option as we move forward as a city. We decide how we want to have that money paid. Or the other option would be to just require our residents to have their barrels covered at all times with a cover and monitor it and have some enforcement on that. Other cities and towns have done that, require all trash to be put in barrels, can't just leave a bag out, have them put in barrels, have that barrel covered, or it won't be taken. They have, some towns have fines that are associated with that, and even some towns have a code enforcement officer type to follow on the trash days, to follow the trash trucks as they go around the city doing their work and putting tickets on during that time. Those are the options I think we have as a city. None of them are great, but I do think we have to settle in on one particular course of action, one decision as to what we want to do as a city. I'm very interested to see what all of you think is the way to go, but I think based on our research, talking to cities and towns, seeing what implementations they're making to try to combat this problem, that's what we're looking at. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Any questions of the council? Councilor Sharris.
Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Mayor, when you talk to other cities and towns and communities with the barrels being picked up by the truck themselves, the automated type of system, has there been shown of any data that there is less trash that ends up on the streets after the pickup with these machines type of trucks, or is there anything on that back and forth? Because I do know in some cases you'll see trash on the ground after the barrels are manually dumped. I don't know if it's more or less.
It's difficult to always quantify that, but I definitely the feeling has been that it has been a help to cities and towns. And you know when we have a major storm, windstorm, if somebody puts their barrels out the night before, which often most people do, I know I do, if a big windstorm comes, knocks the barrels over, knocks the recycling bins over, and trash just goes all over the place. There's been times, I know Councilor Turco, I remember one big storm on one of your trash days in Ward 1 where it was amazing the amount of trash on Linfield Street, as well as I remember one in Ward 6 that was, it's amazing how that happens. And then also if people just put bags out and the animals get into the bags, they rip the bags open and the trash gets out. So, definitely having the trash receptacles as a requirement would definitely help with those type of situations. And I just also think in basic health, how do rodents get in? How do rats get in? They get in open containers, even if it's at the side of the house. I think that would help us on many levels. But it is hard to quantify that.
I just want to be clear. I'm not talking about the trash being in barrels. I think we need to do that. I believe we need to have barrels with lids on it because of those particular reasons. I'm just talking about the 65-gallon containers that you talk about versus the 35-gallon trash barrels that I think most people have now. I'm talking about those, between those two.
Yeah, the cities that have gone in that direction, I think the the feeling has been that it's positive. Having a uniform, everybody knows what the rules are, everybody has those barrels. I think that has been beneficial to those communities.
Thank you, Councilor Sharris. Councilor Turco, please.
Thank you, and I also want to say thank you to Ms. Cameron. I know how much time and effort you put into this, and just with the phone calls that I've given you from Ward 1, and you guys have always been immediately responsive to all of these. We've seen some horrible things, and I don't want to say it's specific to my ward, but it's prevalent in South Peabody. And I, for one, I'm happy this was brought forward. I understand the cost involved with the barrels, as well as the political ramifications behind it. And, Mayor, you know that two different vendors, one I spoke to on the phone and one that met with the health department, as well as Councilor McGinn, Councilor Rossignol, and I said that it will be a political nightmare to implement the covered barrels. That for the first 4 weeks until residents get used to the new system. And I understand that, and I say that just so that you're all aware of what was told to us. I'm willing to face that because of some of the excessive infestations that I've seen in South Peabody, and that's not going to get any better. And I understand the $1.6 million or $1.7 million is an extensive cost to the city, but I believe at least one of the vendors that the one we met with said that we could finance those costs over a 6-year period at 0% interest. So it wouldn't be, as substantial as hurtful as we think it may be. Of course, we would need to work out the cost, but I'm one. My point is, I'm in favor of this, Mayor. I'm in favor of this whole ordinance. I've read it a dozen times. I think that everything here needs to be implemented. I think that it's the only way that we make any headway with the rodent problems in the city. And I know that not all sections of the city are severely affected, so there may be some pushback from other areas of the city, but I think that this is one we definitely need to stand up on and say it's for the quality of life and better for all of us. As far as that goes, as far as the ordinance itself, Sharon, one of the things I love is that you've held the city accountable as well as the resident, so that we're not putting this all on the resident. The city is actually holding a significant amount of responsibility with this. As far as the cost to departments, if we were to implement this portion of the, and this does not include the covered barrels today, the standardized barrels. It does include covering your barrels. I don't think that we need to jump on the purchase of the new receptacles right away, but I think that we could implement this as written. It maybe exempt the Parks Department until we can address the possibility of additional employment. But Mayor, that's obviously, we can't spend the money, you can, unless you'd like to see it otherwise. But I think, what was the number again, Sharon? $177,000? $77,000 for the receptacles for the parks, plus one full-time employee. I'd hate to exempt the parks, but if we had to because of the costs, and we've just done the budget, I would be willing to implement this portion of the ordinance in the next 90 days and exempt parks until we can come up with a way to cover the cost. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Turco. Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would add to Councilor Turco's thanks, my thanks to the Health Department for their work on this issue. Like Councilor Turco and Councilor Rossignol, Mr. Chairman, I was part of the working group that was formed at the request of this committee to provide feedback to the Health Department and other departments on this issue and the ordinance language specifically. This, as the mayor said, it's certainly an issue in Ward 2. It's an issue in Peabody in general, but it's an issue everywhere. This is not a Peabody issue. But I would say, through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councilor Charis, that with respect to your question about what the mayor has heard from other communities, what we've heard is that in this working group that at least anecdotally, where other communities have implemented the standardized covered receptacles, like in Lynn and Salem, they have seen a decline. And, you know, they believe part of the JRM believes that part of the increase in the rodent problem here is as a result of those rodents migrating to Peabody because they're following a food source, and it's now more available in Peabody than it is in those other communities because they've taken some steps. So we need to take those steps. And Mr. Chairman, through you to the mayor, if you're looking to take a pulse of the council, for my part, I am strongly in favor of the alternative of a standardized covered trash and recycling receptacle like we've seen in other communities. I just think that long-term, you know, although it may be a costly alternative, I think over the long run it will be more effective for us because you're dealing with a standardized container. You're not dealing with everybody's idea of what meets the requirements of the ordinance. So it puts our enforcement people in a much stronger position of being able to say, you comply or you don't, you know, so we will eliminate all that gray area associated with allowing everybody to kind of do their own thing and say, yeah, this is what we think covered means. Covered should mean that it's a standard container and that the lid is shut. It's like we've seen in so many communities around the Commonwealth. You know, it's been done there. It's been done in other communities effectively. I'm very confident we can do it here. I do agree with Councilor Turco's comments that, you know, there's going to be a period that would, if we were to go that route, that there would be a period of adjustment. But I think in the long run, we're all going to be better off as a result because, you know, nobody likes where we're headed with this rodent problem right now. So in terms of the overall ordinance, I would be more inclined to take action on the integrated pest management portion of it and hold off on the covered receptacle thing until we can pursue a more comprehensive program with standardized containers for trash and recycling, so that we don't kind of do this as a two-step thing where people might be feeling they're inclined to go out and purchase barrels and then, you know, some number of months later have to replace all those with a standardized container. I think we should try to make it one change and manage our way through that change through education to the citizens. So I agree wholeheartedly that the health department needs more tools on this. I think the integrated pest management piece of this at least starts that process. I'd be very strongly in favor of advancing that portion of this tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Councilor Melville, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just had one question and one comment. Sharon, with the building and facilities, does that include the schools?
Yes, that would include having IPM plans for all the schools and public buildings as well as the dumpster IPM plans.
Thank you. I can tell you just from discussions with some folks on this issue, it's been told to me that it's the largest restaurant chain in Peabody. It's the Peabody Public Schools, just with the amount of food and whatnot that goes in those dumpsters. I can tell you the neighborhood I live in it's been a discussion, as Councilor McGinn knows. My comment on this would be, I think what concerns me is, and I've been spending a lot of time on this, thinking about this. I wasn't part of the working group, but I've been going through some of the areas of the city during their trash weeks, and I do see a lot of folks with the covered trash barrel and it's secured and whatnot. My concern really is the 6.5 days of the week when trash isn't coming and where people are storing their trash. I know of a couple of properties that I saw that I could see that management wasn't there. And I'm not sure, that I think is as much of a problem here as the trash that's in front of us. You know, an elderly person puts out a bag of trash an hour before the trash truck comes. I don't think we're talking about them. But my concern has been, what are the residents that are even their non-owner occupied homes, or they're not paying attention to that. That's part of this plan, correct? That your inspectional services would go to those problem properties?
So we would propose that trash be held in covered receptacles at all time, not just when it's put out curbside. So when it's stored on the property for the week, it's in a covered receptacle, and we do have the ability now to ticket for those sort of things. We do take them on a complaint basis. We don't really have the ability to do the kind of systematic code enforcement to be proactive on that, but we do respond to complaints on it.
Thank you. So yeah, I just, we talk about trash day and in front of the house and trash, but it's that other time period where some people, if they're non-owner occupied, might miss the trash day. I've seen it in a couple of residences and recently, and you could tell trash days out there. There's no trash out, trash is in the back, truck has already gone by. So I think that's very important, that it's the rest of the week that I really think is also important, along with the city's taking its responsibility with some of the facilities we have and how that trash, and I think the city is doing that. So I appreciate that, and I think that this is a good starting point. And I would agree with my fellow councilors that the implementation should, with regard to the covered, should go as the prices and the logistics are worked out from there. So, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Melville. Councilor Rossignol, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I just want to thank Sharon Cameron for all of her hard work on this. This has not only been months, but literally over a year in the making to come up with this comprehensive policy, and I just want to give you all the kudos that you deserve on this comprehensive management plan. I do just have a couple of questions. As far as the overseeing body regarding compliance, would that go through your office, or would there be one department head that would be in charge of compliance?
Are you talking about compliance with the requirement to submit an IPM plan for a permit? So each individual department would be responsible for making sure that that was done as part of their permitting process, but the way I envision that working is similar to what we do now, is we have a routing slip that goes to all the departments, and before Public Services is going to issue their permit to dig up the street, I will have signed off that we've received an appropriate IPM plan. So I think that it'll work that way.
So in that type of plan, what do you see the pecking order being as far as one permitting body versus the next?
So whichever department is going to be issuing the permit, they'll be the last one to get it. It'll come to me, earlier than that, so I can sign off that we've received the IPM plan and accepted it. And then once they have that sign off, then they'll be in a position to issue their permit.
Thank you. Being in that working committee, to Councilor Melville's question regarding the covered receptacles, that was one of the things that was addressed in the working group, is by having these covered receptacles, even if you leave it out in that area, it's still covered, so it's a much better way of storing trash on those other 6 days than what most or some residents are currently doing. So it would actually enhance those other 6 days of compliance, let's say. One question I did have through you, Mr. Chairman, to the mayor regarding the implementation of the covered receptacles. Do you anticipate, I know other communities and some other communities do this, being able to buy extra receptacles if needed? I think it's Revere that one is issued by the city, and if their household needs a second receptacle, they have the ability to purchase one. Is that something that we're envisioning here?
Again, those are different options we have. It is a wide range of how different cities handle it. Some do that. They provide one. If you want to buy a second, there's a cost to it. But again, it's just what we want to do. I think it's important to continue recycling and having a second barrel. So I think it should be to have 2 barrels per residence, but it would be, again, that's a decision we can make as a community.
Thank you. Lastly, regarding park and recs and as far as an extra FTE, right now it's summertime, we have summer help. I think their need for extra, an extra full-time employee is, to be honest with you, I don't think that's necessary right now in the summertime. This is when we have the most help available to Park and Recs. The one thing I do think needs to happen sooner rather than later is getting covered receptacles for our parks, because I think that that is something that's been an ongoing issue that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. But I agree with Councilor McGinn. Implementing this is the first step, and I do think it is in 2 phases. The first step is getting the majority of this up and running, and then the last piece is the receptacle portion. So again, Sharon, I appreciate all of your time and hard work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rosendahl. Councilor Sasslaw, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I, once again, thank you for the hard work for the working committee. I know you've been doing this for the better part of over a year. And while I will secede to the council in Ward 1 that you want to be the rat capital of Peabody, we still have our own issues in Ward 5 too, especially off of Winona Street with the restaurants and the trash facilities. So I think it's something that it is pervasive throughout the city. My only concern on a couple of issues that were brought up is regarding the parks. I wholeheartedly agree with the parks, but since I've been in office, I get a lot of issues and complaints about the bike path. And I know the bike path is supposed to be a, kind of like the beaches, carry in, carry out. And in a perfect world, that'd be nice, but we don't live in a perfect world. I know that we've even had a local business that sponsors waste containers for animals, and I see complaints about, unfortunately, people will use the bag, but they'll just drop it on the path. So I'm not so sure what the solution is. I know I've spoken to the rec department and Director Davis, and it does come down to a manpower issue. I do understand that. Maybe we can do things where the barrels could be placed at the, there's really not entrances, but there are various parts of the bike path where it's certainly accessible. Peabody Road's a perfect example. You could put a barrel right there because a trash vehicle can get down there. Down at Lieutenant Ross Park, there's certain areas that that they definitely, the city JRM vehicles can get there. So I'd just like to ask you to kind of look at the bicycle paths along with the parks. And regarding the standardized covered receptacle, I am 100% on board with that. My job takes me on the road, and it's amazing when I'll go through a particular city or town and I can see it's trash day and you see everything's consistent, everything's the same. And it just tells me that that community has dealt with it, and I certainly understand there will be short-term pain, but I believe the long-term benefit will be worth it. I would actually have an issue if we didn't go to standardized covered receptacles because, so quick story, coming to the meeting tonight, call up my son, bring the trash barrels in, it might be raining, we might lose a cover. They don't sell covers at Home Depot, at Lowe's, and it's so frustrating to lose a cover. So it has to have a standardized vehicle with a covered receptacle. I think it's just paramount because I think that is really all this hard work. If we don't do that, we kind of defeated what we're all trying to do. So I agree with Council McGinn regarding that piece of the puzzle, and I understand that JRM will have to make some adjustments to their trucks, and I'm sure that conversation will take place, but I think that's paramount. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasslaw. Councilor Sharris, please.
Thank you for once again. To Council, through you to Council McGinn, I'm glad you mentioned it. When I asked the question, I kind of wanted the answer to come out in the way you presented it. So sometimes when I ask a question, I'm looking for that answer to be said. My in-laws had this barrel system for over 20, 25 years, and it's you can see how it works. And they work it that the barrel cover must be closed all the way, not even partially. So I do support that and understanding. I wanted what you had said to come out, and I know it came out a couple times now, so I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sharris. Councilor Manning Martin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Sharon. As my colleagues have pointed out, you've done unbelievable work on this. I think it was probably close to 2 years ago, at least a year and a half ago, when I got the call from my cousin saying, "Are you aware of the rat problem in South Peabody?" Her son, the whole family that called me lives in different parts of South Peabody. And she said, "My son just killed 16 of them last week." And you remember this phone call. And my daughter had one in her car in the morning. And so I called you, and I was not aware of the rat problem we were having. So when I called you, and then we brought it up on the floor of Human Services, and you've been at it since day one, and now you're an expert on all things involving rodents, so congratulations to you. But this has been a long time, so I want to congratulate you on that. And I also want to thank Councilors Turco, Rossignol, and McGinn for the formulating the working committee and the work that they did in the interim. I have been, private clubs, just to give you an example, have reached out to me complaining about the health department. All of a sudden now they're going after our dumpsters, and they want this permit and that permit. What's going on? What, do you have a new person working in there? And I just shut them right down and said, forget about it. This is all about rats, and we need to get a handle on it. And this is actually the direction of the city council, that the health department come up with a plan. And they just stopped. They were fine. They said, you know what, that makes complete sense. And it's not often that people call to complain, and they're very angry about something, and then you can say, oh no, this is for everybody's quality of life issues. And so I think if the council continues to move together on this with one message, that it's to improve the quality of life and to address a problem that is growing and affecting the whole city. And to Councilor McGinn's point, I will reiterate that. I have friends in Lynn. When this started to hit the paper quite frequently, a year and a half ago, they said, I think all our rats have moved on to Peabody. And I thought they were kidding. And they said, no, I'm telling you, we implemented the program with as Councilor Sasslaw is pointing out, if you drive through Lynn, it's all uniform, and it's all the, you would think they're expensive, trash receptacles. And I asked my friends, I said, how did that go over, putting that on the residents to purchase those? And they said, no gripes whatsoever. We had such a terrible rat problem. It was a quality of life issue, and it was something that everybody was willing, knew that it needed to be done, and was willing to do their part to rectify it. And then again, they've really made success and headway in their rat issue, their rodent issue, and they really are migrating their way to Peabody. So let's continue to work on this together and implement the plan that you've put together, and hopefully our rats will migrate along. I'm not wishing it on anyone else, but our residents, quality of life will improve with this improvement that you have put forward. And again, I thank you very much.
Any other questions? Councilor McGinn? Thank you, Councilor Manning Martin. Councilor McGinn, please.
No, Mr. Chairman, no other comments. I just, if there are no other councilors to make comments, I'd be ready to make a motion.
If I could for 1 second, please. So I'd like to move forward on the motion for acceptance of Sharon's ordinance, but Mr. Mayor, we're going to leave the barrels in your hands to come up with a plan, because there's so many moving pieces to that. Okay. Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move to advertise the proposed new ordinance draft dated May 21st, 2019, as presented by the Director of the Health Department. So moved. And on the motion, that is the first 4 pages of the handout for clarification. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. Roll call vote, please.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Rossignol,
Yes.
Sasslaw, Charist,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Sharon Cameron, thank you so much for everything you do for us. I appreciate it. Mr. Mayor, thank you for being here. Next up on the agenda, we have a motion by, co-motion, by Councilor Sasslaw and Councilor McGinn to amend Section 6.16.3 of the zoning ordinance to change the minimum number of affordable units to 20% and to request that the city solicitor provide an opinion to confirm that the inclusionary zoning percentages are firm and non-negotiable in the language of the ordinance, is positioned to withstand future legal challenge and to refer to the Industrial Community Development Committee. So moved. Councilor Sasslaw, would you like to take this, or do we want to open right up to community development?
You can open it right up.
Okay. Mr. Bellavance, please. Mr. Bellavance, tell us, give us a little background and where we stand, please.
Yes, good evening. Kurt Bellavance, Community Development Director. In regards to the motion, there was some question in regards to the 25% versus 20% for the as the inclusionary zoning piece of the residential overlay district. Previously, I had come before the City Council and I sought 15% affordable housing, and it was modified or amended to up to the 25%. I was looking to do a compromise and get that to 20%. I'm happy to answer any questions. It's basically in regards to us in community development promoting housing in general. We want to promote more housing. We want to promote different types of housing, and including in that is affordable housing. We always seek to increase that by more than the required 10% that the state wants us to do. So originally we were looking at 15%. That's where the number came from. Bumped up to 25%. Now it's before you this evening is a 20%. Again, community development's in support of housing in general and affordable housing. And we think this is a mechanism in getting more housing in the city. But I'd happy to answer any of your questions specifically on that.
Any questions of the council and Mr. Bellavance? If there's no objection, I'd like to open it up to the public. There's a couple of people that would like to briefly weigh in on this. Is there any objection? There being none, could you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Jacqueline Corvo, 56 Lynn Street. I just wanted to mention a few things that I had been thinking about in terms of the affordable housing threshold. As a gateway community, I think it's really important that we acknowledge that we have a higher than average rate of people who face different socioeconomic challenges than the average resident in Essex County or Massachusetts. So, when you read about gateway communities, the way they describe it is unreached potential. And I think for a lot of people in our community who work really hard, home ownership is unreached potential. So I would urge everyone that before making a decision to really think about those people. Home ownership is a dream for a lot of people, and by reducing those numbers, I think it's detrimental. I think there are other ways that the city can do this. I think looking at permitting fees is one. A lot of cities and towns are looking to reduce or eliminate to attract more housing, which is what the director mentioned is one of the goals. I know Beverly did a fantastic thing by taking advantage of using a tax incentive that the state, I believe, set up for them. It was a long time ago for the Cumming Center. They actually gave the Cumming Center a tax break for a while, and it was really a net gain. And now they do have residences in there as well. So I would just urge you all to be a little bit more creative in your thinking, not to do something that's to the detriment of residents, especially residents that are working really hard and really do dream of owning a home someday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? There being none. Councilors, anybody? Councilor Manning Martin, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you to Mr. Bellavance. Just very quickly, I know the issue that was put in the form of a motion and referred to this subcommittee was regarding inclusionary zoning. But in our residential overlay zoning that we just created very recently, and the ink isn't even dry yet, there was a reduction in height as well from 5 stories to 4. So what is your opinion in that of your office and your expertise as to what are we doing to the housing production and our opportunities lost to provide more affordable housing and more housing in general, which is a need of the state, by reducing the height of the buildings from 5 to 4?
Yes, actually, as part of that original overlay district, they listed 2 categories, 1A and 1B. Those were 4 stories and 5 stories. There was a motion to reduce that to 3 stories and 4 stories. Part of the formula to produce more affordable housing is cost. It's a math, and it comes down to density. How many units can you fit? So the idea was having a taller building so you'd be able to fit more units in that. The higher the density, the more affordable the units you could make. For example, if you're going to do 10 units, 10% is 1 unit. If you're going to do 100 units, then you could do 10 or even increase that up to 25%, which would be 25 units. And part of that formula was to look at was increased heights in order to get a higher density and fit. I think one way or the other, it's about producing more housing and more affordable housing. Certainly, if it's a lower number, that would coincide with a lower height versus a higher number with a higher height. So I hope that answered your question.
No, it didn't at all. Yes, that's kind of common sense explanation. My question is, what is your opinion? Is it a detriment to us to reduce the height of the buildings? Is it a detriment in our effort to provide more housing and more affordable housing? Because you've come with an opinion tonight that 25% should go to 20%. So I'm asking what your opinion is. Should we stay with 5 stories, 4 stories, or go down to 4 stories and 3 stories? Should we maintain a height that will provide us more housing and more affordable housing? What is your opinion?
My opinion is we could go 6 or 7 stories. So I have no objection to height of building. You just balance it out, and if there's other issues, then there's other issues, but we can go higher.
Okay, thank you. That's just to be fair, because the only thing that came up for a change was 25 to 25%, yet we made other changes that wasn't put on the floor, which you clearly have a different opinion on. So I thank you for being honest, and I thank you for answering my question.
Any other councilors? Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just kind of administratively, Mr. Chairman, this was a co-motion, but my portion of the motion was the second piece of it with respect to the request of an information from the city solicitor, and that information is in the regular package tonight, item 8M. So if there's no objection, could we receive that in committee? So moved.
Heard the motion by Councilor McGinn. Any opposed? All in favor? Any opposed? It's a vote. Councilor McGinn, please.
So, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted that brought in because I think that the request was to make a determination as to whether or not the council or I should say a petitioner should see from the language that the inclusionary zoning percentages, whatever they may be, are firm and fixed and not negotiable. And I think we've got an opinion back from the solicitor that indicates that there is no authority granted in the zoning ordinance that he sees to negotiate those percentages. So I just wanted that out there and understood that whatever the numbers are that we arrive at, whether they stay with the way they are in the overlay as it exists today, or whether they are subject to change as a result of the action that the council might take, that they are not subject to change at the time of a special permit hearing at some point in the future. And then the second piece of it was whether or not the language as it existed was positioned to withstand future legal challenges. Understandably, the solicitor seemed, in his response to the council, uncomfortable predicting future legal outcomes and so forth. So there wasn't really much provided with respect to that. So I would say that we as a council took steps at the tail end of the process when developing this language to make sure that there was something in there that addressed incentives. We did include that language, and that should be, we've got nothing back from the solicitor that says that we need to augment that in any way to position it better to withstand future legal challenges. So my suggestion would be that we leave that piece of it alone based on the feedback from the legal department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor McGinn. Any other councilors? Councilor Sasslaw, please.
Thank you, Council Gould. So we always talk about this council about affordable housing and hitting the 10%. As a community, why do we want to get to 10%? We want to get to 10% so that developers can't come in and circumvent local zoning ordinances and ram a Chapter 40B down our throats. It's something that, we've seen happen. Some have been successful, some haven't, but it's always there, lingering. And where we are today as a community is we're about 160 units short of that number. Now, just this week, there was a friendly 40B that was proposed on Route 1 behind Sonic. That is going to be apartments. Apartments, when it's a 40B, 100% of them count towards the number to get to 10%. So that's 60 units. We have a couple of proposals before us tonight that could add approximately 15 units. There's a project up off behind Wendy's, that street that goes up that area, that's already on the books in the DDD for 200 apartments. 15% of those would be 30 apartments. So we're there, we're getting there, we're close, and to be able to say that we are a community that have hit the 10%, not only is it nice to be able to not have to take the threat of the 40B, but I think it just shows that this community is trying to add to affordable housing units to help people who need that. We have given property owners in this ordinance the opportunity to use their land for additional uses in the passage of the residential overlay district. And for that, we felt we were entitled to more affordable housing. We also live in a time where there's congestion in traffic, but we also know that there's a need for additional affordable housing. I'm sure you all get the phone calls. People say, we want no more building. I like no more building, but unless we have a moratorium in place, and I don't even know if that's legal, I'm not a lawyer, we have to deal with the choices that are before us. And when we passed this ordinance and we drafted it, I believe the ordinance was passed with the best of intentions, but since the ordinance is passed, we have continued to learn and ask questions of the leaders in the field. Just recently, in this very hall, there was a public meeting approximately 4 weeks ago that many of my colleagues attended regarding the draft housing production plan. And when asked for her opinion regarding the ordinance that we had passed from Councilor Turco, the woman stated that if the affordability requirements are too stringent to make development feasible, then little or no development would result. So we cut the height and we added to the inclusionary zoning. So if we were to make any further adjustments, those are the only two things we can do, two places we can go. I, for one, am not in favor of 5- and 6-story buildings scattered across this city. In fact, I believe that many of our newer residents who've moved from the communities such as Revere, Malden, Everett, came to Peabody just because they don't want to see that happen here. It's not the vision I have for Peabody going forward, and I hope my fellow councilors agree. Hence, we are faced with only one other adjustment we can make, the percentage for inclusionary zoning. In addition, I did some homework the last couple of weeks, and let me tell you about some buildings, because I think it's important to level set, give people a vision. Latitudes, 72 feet high. We had 60, we voted in 45. 60 versus 72, it's pretty close. That Latitudes building is pretty high. With all due respect about the discussion of 5- and 6-story buildings, Bourbon Street condominiums, 3 stories high. Ledgewood condominiums, 3 and 4 stories high. Cross Keys apartments, 3 stories high. I think that's the right height. I don't, and to compound that argument, let's talk about the neighbors. So I had a neighborhood meeting, once again, a few of my fellow councilors attended a few weeks ago regarding the proposal that will be before us tonight. What did they want? They didn't want 6 stories, folks. They wanted 3 and 4. They didn't want anything, okay? Let's be honest. But that's not the issue before us. That being the case, I think that we are being deliberate, we're being careful, but they certainly, the neighbors, did not want 6-story high buildings. That was loud and clear. So the proposal before us later tonight will be for 4 stories with no relief. In addition, it was just brought to my attention today, I forgot. The planning board, what did the planning board recommend? Does anybody remember when they came and they made a recommendation on what we proposed? They came back and they said, we recommend 15%. And why did they make that recommendation? Because they were concerned that we would get no building if we went to 20 and 25, that we would be handcuffing. And what we're trying to do, we're doing smart development on specific properties that we identified, but we wouldn't get anyone to do any work there. So you have to look at that. They recommended that. The Community Development Director in our packet tonight also recommends that. I think this city cares deeply about creating affordable housing. I think my counselor, Manning Martin, I know she does too. I think we both come from the same place. I just think there's different ways to get there. You know, when you choose to go to Foxborough or Gillette Stadium, you can either go Route 1 or 128. One way's more efficient. That's all it is. So that's why I support the 20%. I think it's the right number. I think it's a good number. I think it's a fair number. And I think it's a step in the right direction. We could certainly go out and we could propose 40%. But if we propose 40% and we get no developers who propose anything, then what good was that? So I hope some of those reasons I just shared with you will help you with your vote this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Sasslaw. Councilor Gravel, please. No? That's okay. Thank you.
I don't want to take away from people's time who are on the committee, but when this came from the planning board, I'm glad Councilor Sasslaw brought that up. It was 15%. We moved it to 25. We reduced the height. And my argument at the time, which I guess is consistent with what the well-paid people from the housing production plan argued, which is you can't have it all ways because you make it unaffordable for a developer to develop. And, you know, we got to get out of our head that it's a bad thing for somebody to make a profit. They're only going to invest their money if they can make a profit. And it's a math problem. If you run the numbers, you can't do it. You can't do it. Now, I'm not in this business, but, you know, I went and talked to people who develop, and they tell you what it costs to build. And the base cost of building, the foundation, the site work, the elevator, the sprinkler system, all that increases marginally per floor as you build. So if you build 2 floors, you've got literally the same cost, or 3, you got the same cost as you would on 4 and 5. But you can have no spread. So you can't spread it out over, you know, if you did a 10,000 square foot building and you got 4 floors, you basically have 40 units, max, given 850 square foot units, which is kind of what most people are building these days. And when you play those numbers out at $175 to $200 per square foot for that type of building cost, you're looking at anywhere from $6 to $8 million to build it. So if you do the math and you take a high proportion of those units and you knock down the rents that you can get by 20 and 30%, you basically can't make your number. So who's going to finance it? Nobody. You got to be able to show proper cash flow. It's a business problem. It's not, and you know, I understand that some people think, well, if you go from 25 to 20, you're hurting the number of units. In a 40-unit development, going from 25 to 20 equals 2 units, 2 affordable units. So how many building sites of 40 units does it take to make up that difference? And if you've got nobody doing it, which nobody's doing it per se, I see a lot of people poking around the 40B zone, and what do? Well, I asked Council McGinn, the unit he was fighting against on Oak Street, they wanted 85 units. They wanted a high rise. So we're either going to get what we want or we're going to get what we get. And that's been my fear for years, that if we don't make it predictable for a developer to come in and develop and be reasonable in our expectations, I'm not against 20%. I'm not against 25% if you want to go up 7 floors. But fundamentally, if you don't make it reasonable for a developer, they're not going to develop. And then you're going to put anybody that does develop into an awful box. How many units? And they're not affordable units. He's only got 2 across the street. And when I spoke to him a couple weeks ago, he had none of them rented. Why? Because his cost to develop is high, so he's got to get his rents up. You get the rents up, people don't come. Especially if the rest of the puzzle plays out, which is it's not the full picture yet for people. So I think, you know, ordinances, we can try to legislate our way to, you know, the perfect nirvana society, or we can think reasonably and think like, you know, try to put yourself in the shoes of the developer. Where's the balance? I think Council Sasslaw asking and the developer asking, the Community Development Department asking to reduce 5%, I think makes a lot of sense. At least you put yourself back in the zone where you can attract somebody to come do this. But if you attract nobody, you know, I always said 100% of nothing is nothing. So zero-sum game. And if people won't develop, and again, I'm not afraid of the 40B. There's some really reputable 40B people out there who built some really cool stuff. They just do what we couldn't come to the conclusion to do. They bypass the zoning ordinance that you put in place that you want to protect yourself with. And everybody can have an opinion on it, but I'm not in the business. I don't know anybody that's in this business on this council. But in our Main Streets meetings, in the economic development groups, you know, which is one that I chair, we've talked to developers. We've heard what they've had to say. We may not want to listen, but we've heard what they had to say. And none of them is saying, yeah, those formulas work great for us. You know, make it as restrictive as possible. Put as many conditions on as possible. That doesn't attract anything. And so we're kind of at the end of the spectrum. And the window of opportunity to do development is closing. We don't have an infinite amount of time to attract people because the economy doesn't stay good all the time. And if the cost of borrowing goes up, people don't build. Simple math. Right now they're building like crazy because the cost of money is low and there's a high demand. I just don't think it's worth. I would rather try what Council Sasslaw and the community development director are suggesting, then to say, well, you know, if we ask for 25%, that gets us more units. It doesn't. Because if only one person does it, and that's all the development you get, because they've already built something, what good is it? You're trying to create numbers, and in a way that you want them. So if you want to control height, lower the number. If you don't care about height, raise the number. To me, it's simple math. And the more units you want, if we say we all want as many affordable units as we can get in the city, then raise them both. Raise one and lower the other. And incent developers to come in here and do something. I don't think anybody here wants that. I don't think anybody here wants a high-rise apartment down in the downtown. And I don't think anybody wants to have a 40B hoisted upon them because we did something innocently thinking we were doing the right thing. It's a balance. And I think, you know, I don't have a vote on this committee, but I would strongly support trying to get to that balance. I don't think 5%, you know, if it was going down to 10% from 25, then I think maybe we would all have, you know, I would say that's a little crazy, but from 25 to 20%, we're talking small numbers of lost potential units, but potentially larger numbers of new units to come online. Opinion.
Thank you, Councilor Gravel. Can you come back next year when we have tough topics and just maybe speak up on the topic? Any other councilors?
Yeah, but I get to speak up there then.
Yeah, that's true. Any other councilors? Councilors, this is a zoning change request, and it takes a motion to send it to the planning board to have them look at it. So, Councilor Sasslaw, would you like to make a motion, please?
I would, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to amend Section 6.16.3H of the zoning ordinance to change the minimum number of affordable units to 20%. So move.
And send to the planning board. In your motion.
To send to the planning
To
board?
the planning board, yeah.
Yes, so move.
You heard the motion by Councilor Sasslaw. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor McGinn, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Councilor Sasslaw. So the way that is worded, the sentence says projects under 6.16 will require an additional 5%. I'm sorry, an additional 10% of the total number of units to be affordable for a minimum of 25%. So I think, to be complete on your motion, what you want to send to the planning board is to change that 10% to 5% and the 25% to 20%. Is that correct?
I couldn't find my piece of paper. I knew there were two numbers that had to be changed, but exactly correct. That would be, I agree. Projects under 6.16 require an additional 5% of total number of units of affordable housing for a minimum of 20%. So move.
You heard the motion by Councilor Sasslaw. The clerk had that in writing anyway, so any other discussion? There being none, roll call vote, please.
Councilors McGinn,
Yes.
Rozignol,
Yes.
Sasslaw,
Yes.
Charis,
Yes.
Gould.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Can I get a motion to adjourn, please?